This is the Redmi Note 11 Pro, and here is the Redmi Note 11S. It's mind-blowingly difficult to pick between these two smartphones, and that's because these two smartphones share about 90% the same features. In this video, I'm gonna help you decide on which to pick, your family around here, and so without taking much of your time, yo guys, let's get started. Let's start with the pricing for the smartphones. For the Redmi Note 11S here, I got it for 135,000 naira, around $270 for the 6 gigs of RAM and 128 gigs of internal storage. While the Redmi Note 11 Pro I got for 170,000 naira, about $340 for the 8 gigs of RAM and 128 gigs of internal storage. So that's about a $70 difference in price for the different memory configs. Speaking of the design on these smartphones, well, they are alike, and you get the audio jack, USB-C ports, top and down firing speakers, side-mounted fingerprint scanners, IR blaster to control your electronics, dual SIM trays with a dedicated memory expansion slot on the Redmi Note 11S, while the Redmi Note 11 Pro gives you this hybrid SIM slot, so either dual SIMs or one SIM and a micro SD card placed in the smartphone. And most of all, while you get a 33-watt fast charger from the Redmi Note 11S, you get a 67-watt fast charger from the Redmi Note 11 Pro. Some things that come at you when you hold these devices in terms of the design would include the fact that the Redmi Note 11 Pro is actually larger in size, all thanks to the bigger display on here, which I have some things to talk about here. And you have this flatter back, unlike the curved edges at the back of this Redmi Note 11S. The rear here is made out of glass and not plastic as with the Note 11S. And also, instead of Gorilla Glass 3 protection like the Redmi Note 11S, you get Corning Gorilla Glass 5 protection from the Pro here. And that's where the major differences in terms of the design ends. I'd definitely give it to the Redmi Note 11 Pro as a winner in terms of design in this comparison. Now, moving over to the display, which is actually a really important aspect about these smartphones. I actually did play with both of them side by side a lot, and I noticed a few things about the smartphone's displays. But before I share with you guys what I found out, the Redmi Note 11 Pro has a 6.67-inch AMOLED display with a 1080p Full HD Plus resolution, and this display refreshes at 120Hz, which is silky smooth in terms of animations and gaming. While the Redmi Note 11S gives you a 6.43-inch AMOLED display, Full HD resolution also, and this refreshes at 90Hz. That might seem a little slower than the 120Hz from the smartphone, but I think it's plenty sufficient for anyone. I honestly would say 98% of the time, you won't really notice the difference on this display's refresh rate. As far as what I noticed from these displays, the Redmi Note 11 Pro's display is actually a little warmer, or should I say calmer to look at, while the Redmi Note 11S has this little cooler tone to it. And it doesn't matter what display setting you set the smartphones to. So side by side, you always would notice this little magenta tint to the 11S's display, and this only comes up when you compare it against this smartphone, but without it, I'm not sure you guys will actually see that. Both displays are quite bright outdoors, although on paper, the Redmi Note 11 Pro's display has this slightly better display. I think some persons would prefer the smaller display, people like myself, and 90Hz is good enough for anybody. And also you have this advantage of less battery drain for the use of smaller displays and 90Hz, other than having a bigger display and 120Hz to push out here. So guys, which of these displays would you pick? Let me know in the comment section below, and while you are at that, kindly hit on that subscribe button. I'd really appreciate that. Speakers are amazing and quite loud on both of these smartphones, and you have a stereo speaker configuration on the Redmi Note 11 Pro and also on the Redmi Note 11S. Speakers on the Redmi Note 11 Pro are quite louder than those on the Redmi Note 11S here. The intensity of the speakers on the Redmi Note 11 Pro are comparable to the Redmi Note 11 variant, which was also louder than the 11S for some reason. On both smartphones, you get Android 11 out of the box with MIUI 13 running on top of this operating system. Same experience, same amount of bloatware apps, which are mostly removable. This also is the case when it comes to processing. You have the same processor on here, the Helio G96 processor from both of the smartphones. This should mean the same experience from both devices, right? I mean, in terms of performance, but that's not the case and not exactly true from my tests and use of the smartphones. Now, when I played PUBG on the Redmi Note 11 Pro, I noticed more jitters and lags than I had noticed on the Redmi Note 11S. That got me a little bothered, considering that I got the 8 gigs of RAM variants for the 11 Pro and the 6 gigs of RAM variants for the 11S. Also, these two smartphones were at the max settings I could play the game on, that's HD graphics and high frame rate. But I was so bored that I decided to run benchmarking apps on both of them, and the Redmi Note 11S with the smaller RAM size here kept coming on top. And here's the benchmark score for the Geekbench, and also after running extreme loop tests, actually 20 loops with 3D mark on these smartphones, the Redmi Note 11S always came on top. I actually wonder what this is, since these smartphones run on the same processor and the same operating system. My guess here would be that maybe because of the 120Hz refresh rate on the Redmi Note 11 Pro, while the Redmi Note 11S here ran on 90Hz. I actually didn't bother checking the benchmark scores while running these displays on 60Hz. I just thought you guys should know about the jitters I got from 90 and 120Hz running benchmarking apps on the smartphone. But these smartphones are definitely great for basic mobile computing activities, and both have this feature that extends the RAM you get. So from 6 gigs of RAM here, it can be maxed out at 8 gigs using the internal memory on the smartphone, and the 8 gigs of RAM here maxes out at 11 gigs depending on your use case. As far as cameras, you get identical camera modules on both of the smartphones, 108 megapixel main sensor, 8 megapixel ultra wide, 2 megapixel depth and macro lenses, and also 16 megapixel front facing cameras. And as far as the details from this device's photos, you get about the same quality, the same dynamic range, and in fact similar photos in terms of exposure, and the quality of images almost match what you expect. This doesn't mean there aren't slight variations with the images. I mean, sometimes photos from the 11 Pro have this little more greenish yellow tint to them in the same scenario. At other times, like in front-facing camera video tests, the Redmi Note 11 Pro here would blast the reds out of proportion before quickly correcting for that. These are slight inconsistencies that popped up because I actually went searching for them. Otherwise, you should expect about the same experience from both of the smartphones in terms of the cameras here. I'd actually cover a Gcam installation for better cameras on these smartphones, and that's if this video gets to 1,000 likes, so hit that like button right away. Videos, on the other hand, can be capped out at 1080p 30fps on both smartphones. But what do you think about the videos you see right now though? Both of the smartphones, the Redmi Note 11S and the Redmi Note 11 Pro, come with 5000 mAh battery out of the box, but a better battery experience comes with the Redmi Note 11S. Reason being that you have a slightly smaller display with a lower refresh rate, 90 against 120, so better battery life with the smartphone. You can save more battery life from this smartphone by taking down the refresh rate to 60Hz, but I wouldn't recommend that. Why would you do that? I mean, you get super fast chargers with the smartphones, 33 watts against 67 watts here, and they juice up these devices quickly. No doubt the Redmi Note 11 Pro is the better device here, but it's a slightly better display in terms of size and refresh rate, maybe a faster charger, Corning Gorilla Glass protection for the screen here. Are these enough reasons for you to spend that extra $70 or 35,000 naira to get this device? I don't think so. I think the Redmi Note 11S is a sweet spot here. Also, I know benchmarking apps are not everything, but the Redmi Note 11S kept winning in tests I ran, the benchmarking scores you got from the smartphones. And if you have money to splurge, you can go for the Redmi Note 11 Pro. But before you get into the market for any of the smartphones, check out my review on the Redmi Note 11S here. Call you that day.